Practical Beekeeping with Roger Patterson. This is KM115.
Welcome to the KM115 Bay. This week we are talking to Roger Patterson from West Sussex in the United Kingdom.
And this is episode 115 of our Beekeeping podcast. And welcome to the KM1 Buzz. And I'm Gary.
And I'm Margaret, and we are beekeepers from the hills of the Waitakere Ranges and the wild west coast of Auckland in New Zealand. And our podcast is about beekeeping, gardening, and a bit of politics about environmental issues which are related to bees. And we've also been known to go off in a few tangents and about other issues. But this episode is all about focusing the mind.
And we would like to thank Mead Drinker Tyson, who's been supporting the KM1 Buzz since October 2016. Thanks a lot, Tyson.
Thanks, Tyson.
And if you want to keep the KM1 Buzz podcast going, consider supporting us on kiwi.bz/banana. That'd be awesome, wouldn't it?
And we love bananas.
And this post does contain some affiliate links relating to books and stuff, so we may receive a small payment if you make a purchase using these links. So we'd appreciate if you did that. And the show notes for this show are kiwi.bz/Roger. That's ROGER. And this was recorded back in October 2016.
Wonderful. And this is moving along. We want to thank you. Thank you for listening to our show. We hope that you enjoy Roger Patterson's interview, and we know life is busy for you, and we appreciate you taking time to join us. Information from this interview, you too can be focused.
Absolutely. No, I enjoyed Roger Patterson's book. I've been reading his book, and he's great. He's been beekeeping for over 50 years, isn't it?
Well, he said he's been beekeeping since 1963. I mean, that must mean 15, 16,
He started beekeeping when he was 15. So he's very popular author in England, and he does a lot of speaking in England too. So sit back and enjoy Roger Patterson. This is awesome. And here's the introduction. Roger has been keeping bees since 1963, and he's from West Sussex in the United Kingdom. He is the author of Beekeeping, a Practical Guide. He is a practical beekeeper concentrating on the basics and keeping things simple. He is also the current president of the Wisborough Green Division of West Sussex Beekeepers Association.
Well, simple beekeeping is my kind of man. So what's the first question, Gary?
Roger, do you see any difference in how people keep bees in different parts of the United Kingdom?
I get around the country probably more than anyone. I see some very, very different things, even from one little association to the next one. Very, very different. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to achieve the same thing. Providing you're not harming your bees, it don't really matter, does it?
No, exactly. Yeah, as long as the bees come first, eh?
Well, yeah, there's too much intolerance in beekeeping anyway. And there's always intolerance for other people's methods. As far as I'm concerned, people can keep bees how they like. And I wouldn't say it's right or wrong. I might perhaps suggest another way, but very often people just stick to whatever they know. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, there are some that change. I mean, I've been keeping bees over 50 years, and I'll change if somebody comes up with something different, or I see somebody's doing something differently. I might perhaps just have a look at it and say, well, I won't do that directly, but it might influence what I'm doing. So I sort of modify what they're doing and bring it into what I'm doing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, sometimes you find that, you see stuff on the internet and stuff, and you think, well, I'll give it a go on a small scale and see if it works for me, and then just don't just try stuff for on all your hives at the same time.
Yeah, but having said that, some of the stuff on the internet isn't that great. Not necessarily wrong, but of course, internet's worldwide, and you can get some places, even in England, where 10 miles away, conditions are different and people do things differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, every environment's totally different, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, you could get, let's say, hilly country, and I know a chap who's got bees in a valley in Wales, and one side of the valley never ever gets any sun. So if he puts his bees on that side of the valley, they behave differently than if he puts them on the sunny side. people don't realise that. That's one of the problems with either books or the internet or magazines. Probably a little bit the same in New Zealand, I suppose. If somebody from the tip of the south writes something, it may not quite suit those in the north.
No, exactly. And the other thing beginners fall into is if they're looking at forums in other countries, and then they go, oh, now we've got to start wintering down our hives, and they don't realise that winter doesn't, it's not winter in New Zealand, it's summer.
Yeah, so some people are on the second week in May, you do so and so or whatever.
Yeah,
but it just didn't like that.
It's all relative to where you are in the world. It's so true that one valley to another valley can be totally different.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, especially somewhere like England. The further north you go, you get heather, and 2 or 3, 4 miles away, you could be either in or out of heather, and that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, we interviewed Michael Young from Northern Ireland, and he said that heather honey is the best honey in the world. Is that true?
Well, it depends what you mean the best. Although I'm not in the heather district, I love heather honey. I think it's a really good flavour, but some don't like it at all. I think probably because it's got a distinctive flavour and it's different. But if they were born and brought up in a heather district, they get used to it. Yeah,
exactly. You started in 1963, eh, Roger? So how did you get started in beekeeping? What attracted you to it?
How long you got? I was born and brought up on a farm, and I didn't realise it, but I found by accident a hive of bees completely covered in brambles on a next door neighbour's farm, only about 150 yards from our boundary. And I found it because I worked with them as a teenager in the evenings, harvest time, bale cut for hay, that sort of thing. And I just happened to see these, and I asked the question, if who they were. I was told that nobody's looked at them for years. Well, that was after my very first biology lesson at secondary school, where the teacher gave us a lesson on honeybees, and that was at the age of 11. And I remembered that. So what I did was I contacted the teacher, and in them days, teachers lived in the same village as everybody else. I contacted the teacher and asked him about them and how much they were worth. What I found out was that these were in a WBC hive, and I found out there were 2 empty WBC hives in the barn. So I said to him that there was this colony there, and there were 2 empty hives. How much are they worth? So he said, well, offer them £10, he said, and see how you get on. So I offered them 3 and got them. And that's how I started. So, of course, I trimmed them out, and with a bit of help from him and 1 or 2 other people, I started beekeeping. So that was June 1963 as a 15-year-old.
Wow. And do you still keep WBC hives now, or have you changed to the British ones?
No, I haven't had any real WBCs. I've got bits and pieces around. I haven't had any real WBCs for over 20 years, I suppose, because I went semi-commercial at one stage, and although I still used parts of WBCs, I still used the brood chambers. If you do migratory beekeeping for pollination, that sort of thing, it's a bit difficult lifting WBCs on your own. I'm still involved with WBCs because some of our beekeeping members have got them. I go to lots of other places, do demonstrations and that sort of thing, and they got WBCs. They're okay, do a good job. Bees like them, so yeah, keep them going. So anyway, that was that, and it really just went from that.
I mean, do you really think it matters what sort of shape or size your beehive is? Do you think the bees really care?
No, I don't think I mind too much at all. I've taken lots of colonies, like well over 200 colonies out of wild places, out of trees, buildings, that sort of thing. And bees, I think, naturally will build vertically. They will build horizontally if they're forced into it, such as they go into a floor space or something like that. They'll build out quite well. And bees are very, very adaptable. So I really don't think they mind too much what sort of hive they have. Obviously, and this is something you don't read too much in books, obviously the bee needs to suit the hive and the hive needs to suit the bee. Apart from that, I don't think it matters at all. I've not kept bees, but I've handled bees in virtually every hive apart from the sun hive, if indeed you can handle bees in a sun hive. I've never done that, but all the lesser hives, let's say top bar hives, Vory hives, handle bees in them, MDs, Langstroths, Smith, commercial, all those I've handled bees in. But I stick mainly to nationals, in fact, solely to nationals myself.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we generally have just Langstroth hives here. Yeah, and top bars as well, and bench hives. That's all we have in New Zealand at the moment.
Yeah, well, yeah, I even handled bees in a concrete top bar hive a couple of years ago. Somebody cast one out of concrete.
Wow. That must have been hard to move.
I don't know how the hell he did it. It was about 2 inches thick, this thing. Yeah, wow. It was a bit like a cattle trough.
Wouldn't it be too cold? Wouldn't it be like the heat, the coal would like go through the concrete? I would have thought.
Oh, I don't know, but it was in a teaching apiary. I assume it was okay. I was just invited there to give a demonstration. Really, you've got to remember when you're handling other hives that it's different than whatever you've got. You know, the lugs are different or something like that. I get on okay with top bar hives. I wouldn't use them myself. Yeah, I'm happy to handle bees in them.
Yeah, no, we've got one here, and it's going really well. So they're doing okay. Probably because we don't deal with them as much. You're not really working them as much. So they're probably just they seem to have come through winter really strongly for some weird reason. So. Yeah,
one thing that concerns me a little bit with them is in cold weather in the winter when bees cluster tightly, because the combs aren't very big. I do wonder what would happen if the bees ran out of food on the combs they're on, because if they obviously can't get over the top of the combs. If they can't get under or around the outside onto the food, I'm wondering about isolation starvation. But I've never heard of it, so I really don't know. I think if it was me, I would put some holes through the combs.
Yeah, I think I would too, but just before winter. And the other thing I've had concerns with is if you have the entrance in the middle, they tend to move to one side and then they don't come back the other way. I've heard of that before too with top bars.
Well, bees naturally, when they choose their own nest, they generally find somewhere with a cavity above the entrance. So they have bottom entrances as a choice, not top entrances. So I suspect what bees are doing is just responding to whatever they're given. Like I say, they're very adaptable, and they would do things to suit the circumstances.
How does it feel to know the most famous dog in beekeeping?
Yeah, poor old Nell. Everybody loves her. Well, I've had dogs all my life, and if I go around to other places to talks or anything like that, people get to know my dogs. And the last one, Meg, everybody knew her, and then I got Nell as a puppy when I still had Meg, so I still had two of them. Then Meg died, and there was actually a obituary for her in one of the beekeeping magazines.
Oh, that's fantastic.
The only beekeeping dog was ever been obituary for. Yeah, she just comes round with me. At the Isle of Man conference, I think 14 people asked me where she was.
Yeah, does that make you feel a bit bad, like they're more interested in the dog? Or?
Well, no, not really, because I I don't mind being remembered for my dog rather than me. That doesn't bother me at all. He goes something that I don't get involved with.
No, exactly.
But, she in a lecture or something like that, she knows when to bark. She's funny, she is. But if we get an all-day event or something like that where there's lunch involved, she won't pinch anything, but she'll sit and flutter her eyelashes, and people give her sandwiches, sausage rolls, and all sorts of things they do.
So you don't need to feed her for a few days after a conference.
Or a few days before, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So have you trained her how to detect foul brood in a hive yet?
No. She's actually quite clever because she can recognise a beehive. There's one or two that fool her, but she can recognise most beehives, and she gets within about 20 yards, I suppose, and that's it. And then just sits there. She won't get any closer. Very occasionally, somebody's got a different type of hive, and she gets fooled by that, but she very soon works out what it is. Does occasionally get stung, but she's quite quick. Well, she's border collie.
Yeah, our dog. We've got a dog called Snow, and she does the same thing. She only runs around the hives at night time when she knows they're all asleep. So.
Well, at my local teaching apiary, my local association teaching apiary, where I'm apiary manager, so I go to most meetings. She's worn herself a little patch where she stays, and those little patches about 4 or 5 feet diameter, something like that, and she just comes down and she just sits there and lays down and waits for us to go back.
I think, because Snow got stung when she was a pup on her paw, so she sort of put her off after that. Must have hurt, but she still runs around and tries to eat wasps when they're flying. Yeah,
well, they snap at them, don't they? I suppose that's the only thing they got to defend him with. Of course, they don't know their sting. Well, not till afterwards.
Yeah, she's had a big lip a few times with wasps.
Yeah, but I have seen a few dogs, not very many, but a few that they don't belt off into the distance. They stay there and get all agitated and try and bite the bee or the wasp off. Of course, that then attracts others because they think they're under threat, and it makes it even worse.
So besides Nell, are any other members of your family involved in the beekeeping?
No, none at all. Nobody's interested. It's not like it used to be, where it went down from one generation to the next. We've got quite a big beekeeping association. There's about 160, I suppose, something like that. And I think there's only a couple or three where there's 2 generations that are keeping bees. But when I first started keeping bees over 50 years ago, there were actually quite a lot. I don't know, perhaps 15, 20%, something like that, where there were 2 generations kind of meeting. Oh,
well, I think we need to encourage youngsters into it because, they're the next generation, aren't they? So they've got to keep the torch burning.
Well, youngsters do get a bit of hammer from older people sometimes, but they've got an awful lot of things to do, and there's a lot of things to distract them from the sort of things that older people perhaps are interested in. But having said that, I'm finding there's quite a lot of youngsters getting involved in beekeeping these days. Yeah,
it's fantastic when young kids get involved in it. I find it's really sort of positive.
Oh yeah, that's all. And because of the teaching I do, I like to see young people, because if you get somebody who takes up beekeeping when they're retired, let's say 65 or even some older than that, we just had one over 80 that's just started. No disrespect to them, but there isn't the life in them, beekeeping life in them, as if they started, let's say, 20 or 30. So, there's the same effort teaching them, but there's not the same result.
Because you've been teaching since the 1970s, isn't it?
Early 1970s. I forget when it was, but must have been about 1972, something like that.
And so how have you found the students have changed over that time?
Oh, a lot. When I first started keeping bees, at least 50%. I live in a rural area, right in the middle of West Sussex, and all the bigger towns are, effectively on the edge. When I started keeping bees, 50% of people worked on the land in some way. They worked on farms, or they were gardeners, or they were foresters, or something like that. Those people were used to animals, stock, that sort of thing. They were very practical, and the early 60s wasn't that long after the end of the Second World War, make do and mend and that sort of thing. So people made a lot of their own kit, or they repaired it. Now, because there's a change in agriculture, their houses are taken up by people who are retiring, let's say, early, buy a place in the country, and they're a different sort of people. No disrespect to them, but they're not always tuned in with country and country life. They're usually not very practical, and it's, you've got to try and get the same sort of information over to them, but you've got to try and do it in a different way. Also, other things have changed too. In the old days, people learnt from their parents, or, there was always somebody else on the farm who perhaps kept bees, and they would learn from them. Now, a lot of people learn either from books or the internet, and, they're not such good practical beekeepers as the old folk were, but they're more knowledgeable on the sort of theory. So it has changed quite a bit.
So do you think they're more knowledgeable about the bee biology?
Oh, yeah, very definitely. Some of the people that were beekeepers when I first started were actually very good handlers of bees, most of them. A lot of them didn't wear any protective clothing at all, and I've always reckoned that 25% of members did not wear protective clothing in the early 1960s. Now everybody does, and I think that makes a difference as well. The newer beekeepers, yes, they do know the more about the biology of the bees. They certainly know more about diseases. Although the older beekeepers could recognise them, but they wouldn't necessarily know the causes or how to get over them. Of course, we've had Varroa come in since then, and that has made a huge difference. Varroa and the associated viruses. But every year that goes by, there are less and less people who get bees pre-Varroa, and they just don't realise how easy beekeeping used to be.
I know. That's what I tell people, because I think, everyone used to be a natural beekeeper before Varroa, didn't they? There was you weren't putting chemicals in your hives or anything like that, were you?
Well, actually, they did. A lot of beekeepers, when I first started, put throw mixture in. I think almost whether they needed it or not. Certainly quite a lot put in Fumidil B, which now we're not allowed to. I think there are one or two countries in the world that still allowed to use fumigillin, but we're certainly not, and haven't for about 3 years. Throw mixture has been banned for, 20, 30 years, something like that, I suppose. So I think people did different sorts of things. Perhaps the chemicals weren't quite as hard. But if you go back to the sort of 20s or so, they used to put some pretty strong disinfectant in, things like Izal and those sort of things.
What was the reasoning for that, Roger?
It was really to try and combat foul brood. But I do wonder if they were actually seeing foul brood, because the two foul broods weren't split till, I forget the date, but it was probably about 1910, something like that. Previous to that, they thought it was the same organism. I got a sneaking suspicion, by some of the records I've seen, going back to the back end of the 19th century, my guess is that they might have mistaken chalk brood for it, because chalk brood, in some states, can look a little bit like EFB. And I'm just wondering if they didn't get the wrong thing, because they, of course, couldn't do a microscopic examination of them in those days, because they didn't know what they were looking for.
Yeah, because they do look similar. We don't have European foulbrood here, so I've never seen it, but is it similar to AFB? It looks similar, doesn't it?
Oh, no, it's actually, well, it's easier to tell the difference between EFB and AFB than EFB and chalk brood. About 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, I suppose, and I mean absolutely no disrespect to the bee disease officer at all, but I got some hives at the bottom of my garden, and I looked through them, and I thought, oh no, EFB. So I called in the bee inspector, and he came within a day or so. He went to his colony, and he said, I'm afraid that's what it is. But he said, we'll do a test on it. Did the test on it, and it was negative. And it was chalk brood. Even a pretty experienced bee inspector got fooled. So they can look very, very similar. Chalk brood seems to vary quite a bit. I don't know if it was different strains or what. That's way above me. But.
Yeah, no, there's lots of different strains of chalk brood. I understand. Yeah, lots. Yeah, we've had a lot of AFB around here at the moment. So I had to destroy 2 hives a couple of weeks ago. So
yeah, what about the colony of bees though?
No, you have to kill the bees. Yeah.
Yeah. Ours is destruction by fire. EFB, depending on the view of the bee inspector, you can do various things with it. You can use antibiotics, or you can do a shook swarm. Neither of them 100%, but it's really up to the bee inspector. And most beekeepers go on the advice of the bee inspector. There are a few that don't, but they wouldn't take advice from anyone. Some people, but.
No. Oh, that's really yeah. I mean, that's good. That's really fantastic. You guys have got that bee inspection service, eh?
One of the problems we got in this country is that the vast majority of beekeepers are out and out amateurs, and the problem with that is the vast majority of them will never ever see foul brood, never see it. So of course that's the danger, because when they do get it, they don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have a similar problem here. They don't know what it looks like, so they just think it's nothing, which is crazy. But the hive eventually dies anyway. But in the meantime, they've infected every hive in the neighbourhood. I think education is really, really important to get out there to people, and I think it's great that you've continued David Cushman's website. It's fantastic. Is that a challenge to keep that going?
Yeah, I keep it going. Dave Cushman was an invalid, and he spent about 15 or 16 hours a day in front of a screen. Well, I can't do that. I just cannot do it. I just do what I can when I can, really. I'll get a bit of help. People send me stuff, and or something crops up, put it on. But it's really well known, really respected, and the good thing about it is that Dave always insisted that everything that went on there, even though he might not agree with it, if it was sound and it was of use to a beekeeper, he put it on. And I've just carried on that with that philosophy. There are a few things on there which I would rather weren't on there, but I keep them on because it's going to be of use to some people.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, that's great. And you practice the punch cell method of queen rearing, is that true?
Yeah. I'm the only person I know that still uses it on a regular basis, and I find it brilliant. In fact, there's a booklet that's now out of print, and that's really been the only authoritative source for some time. It's now out of print. I was going to rewrite it, but I spoke to a few people, and they said it would be disrespectful to the original author, who's now been dead 30 years, I suppose. So I'm actually right in the process of writing another one. It'll probably only be no more than a booklet. But the thing is, when I go and do lectures and demonstrations on queen rearing, I generally give them about 4 methods, and that is the one that has the most interest by a very, very long way, because people can immediately see that all you need is a tube. Well, a little more than that, but a tube to punch the cell out, and away you go. But I doubt if many people end up doing it, because you need to make the punches because they're no longer commercially available. Yeah,
I've seen some people, they basically cut around the cell with a knife.
Oh, that's fiddling around. Yeah, if you want half a dozen cells, fine. But this method is really quick, and it works a treat. And it's actually my favourite method of queen rearing. Although for demonstration purposes, I'm happy to use several of them. I do grafting. I use a cell plug method. I use Miller method. I still like the punch cell because it works well. You haven't got to touch the larva, so there's no damaging, and the take or acceptance by the bees is as good as anything else.
Yeah, that sounds good. Oh, I'd be very interested to get a copy of that book when you do it. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, it works really well. In fact, there's a bit on Cushman's website which Dave originally wrote. I've now chopped it around a bit because a lot of Dave's stuff, there's not meaning any disrespect to him, but he tended to write something a little bit, go off do something else, and come back and add to it. So it was a bit disjointed. So in a lot of places, regular visitors to it realise that I'm playing around a bit, and I'm trying to make things in a more logical order than Dave did. But of course, that in itself is time consuming. But to me, if something's nice and easy to read, then people will read it. If it's not, and it's confusing, they'll just throw their hands up in the air and get on to something else.
Well, exactly. Just sort of start the study, doesn't it? I'll have to look up that punch cell method on there, and I'll put a link in the show notes for that too.
Yeah, it's surprising though how many people don't know about it.
Really? Oh, okay.
It really is, yeah. But I don't really know. I think probably give it as a list of resources for people who are teaching beginners, perhaps. But I've had tried to get beekeeping associations to link it to their website, and it's devil's own job. Either some webmasters just aren't interested in that sort of thing, or perhaps, I don't know, perhaps they've been told not to. No idea.
Oh, hopefully this talk will change that.
There is a huge amount of information on there. Huge amount.
Yeah, it's massive. It's massive. It's basically got everything on it.
Yeah. Actually, I know the scientific community use it, or some of them do. Let's put it that way. Not in general, but I know some do. Even if it's to find out where to find something else. You're
involved in this in the Bee Breeders Association. What is that? What's that all about?
Yeah, a bit of a Bee Improvement and Bee Breeders Association. It is an organisation that's been in existence for over 50 years. Started off as a Village Bee Breeders Association, but then changed its name. It really started out as an organisation for enthusiasts of our native bee and near native bees. And at one stage it had some really good, knowledgeable beekeepers, long-time beekeepers too. It's moved on like other things. What we're finding is that people now want things that are sort of local to them, and indigenous type things. We're finding that that membership is holding up quite well. We're getting quite a lot of new members. We're doing quite a lot of events. We did the conference. We do Bee Improvement for All Days, which are an all-day winter event. So we tell people how they can assess colonies, how they can work out what are the good ones to breed from, what are the ones that perhaps they should cull, how they can raise queen cells, either natural queen cells or what I would call artificial queen cells, your grafting, your Miller methods and that sort of thing, how they can make up mating nukes, and either on standard combs or perhaps mini nukes. So all of that is absolutely crammed into a whole day. And then what we've got are the next stage on from there, where we actually go out into various apiaries, and we do either 1 or 2 day courses. The content of the two is around about the same, but with the 2-day course it goes into greater depth, and it has got about 3 hours PowerPoint presentation.
Wow, that would be a long day.
I prefer the 2-day rather than the 1 day. The problem with the 1 day is they tend to ask a lot of questions that are covered in the 2-day course. Because with the 1 day, sometimes you're rushing around so much that you're not giving people the reasons why you're doing things. They're the sort of things we're doing. We have got bee breeding groups, which are based on fairly small areas. I wouldn't like to take a stab at the figures too much, but probably 10-mile radius, something like that. So fairly small areas. It could be based in a town or a district or something like that.
Is it using the British black bee or just the Italian bees, or what sort of breeds?
If it's available, yeah. You say the British black bee, you're really referring to the dark northern European bee, Apis mellifera. Well, of course, that covers the whole of naturally, that covers the whole of Northern Europe. So everywhere in England and the islands, and Ireland as well, there are some very good populations of either them or fairly pure, some very good in some places. But, of course, with all the hybrid, the importation, there's heavy hybridisation, and in some areas there aren't any at all. So what we've got to try and do is satisfy everybody in some way. So even those areas where there are no native bees, we try and encourage people to improve their bees from what they've already got. But of course, some of the imports are very prolific, and the problem, or one of the problems with that, is that if you get, let's say, a 2-week period in the summer where it's just not good flying weather, non-prolific bees will look after what food they've got usually. But the prolific ones, the queens just keep laying and laying and laying and laying, and you can soon lose a super of honey. They can go through that in a week.
Yeah. I think the best bee is the one that's adapted to the area, I guess. And
Bibber have been saying this for 50 years. All of a sudden, a few of the so-called names in beekeeping are repeating it, and all of a sudden they're listened to. But Bibber hasn't been listened to for years.
Yeah.
It's daft, really, but there it is.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, doesn't it, that the bees adapt to the area. They don't. If you keep importing bees from some other country or some other place.
That's right. Yeah. Well, if you're in a country where bees aren't indigenous, like the States or Australia or New Zealand, then you've got to do the best of what you've got, and probably use those that have evolved in similar sort of climates. But at the Bibber conference, we had Randy Oliver.
Oh, yeah, he's been on the show too before.
Yeah, come to us. And he was saying the same. You really need to get bees that suit yourself. But I was out in the States doing a couple of workshops out there in June, up in the Hudson Valley area. Up there, where the winters are pretty harsh, they're really suffering from bees being imported from the same country. They're coming up from the south. As an experienced handler of bees, the only protective equipment I wear is a veil. I don't wear any gloves, don't wear any bee suit, never ever worn a bee suit. I'm in tune with the colony, and some of them, they're absolutely lifeless. There's no sort of character to it, no vibrancy to the colony at all. And you can tell that they're just not good doers. But apparently what happens is that they've got hard winters. And apparently what happens is that people are buying packaged bees from the south, beginners are, they die out, oh dear, next year, go and do exactly the same. But when I was there, they have actually got some quite good bees, and if only they stop bringing stuff up from the south, let the natural selection knock out the bad ones and raise queens from the good ones, I think they get much, much better bees in that area. Effectively, they're doing the same sort of thing as nature did.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was talking to a beekeeper yesterday, and he was working in Canada, and they were importing bees from Hawaii, and they wondered why they kept dying all the time. Just like totally different environments, isn't it?
Yeah. Trouble is, I don't think you achieve anything by criticising people. If you can do it by persuasion and put a reasonable argument, and best of all, show people they're okay. It's strange with beekeepers; they'll believe some of the nonsense and twaddle on the screen, but if you speak to them, they don't believe it. So, for some reason, if it's in print in some way, they take it as gospel.
Well, if it's on the internet, Roger, it must be true.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, Roger, if you could travel back in time before you started beekeeping, what would you tell you're a young Roger?
I had an incredibly good grounding from a man who was the best handler of bees that I've ever seen. He didn't actually know what was going on inside the hive very much, but he could work things out. In those days, you could get by on that. I think probably if I'd gone down the slightly more academic route, I might have perhaps been able to understand some of the things that bees do a little bit better. But on the other hand, that might have been at the expense of the practical side. And I'm well known for being a practical beekeeper. And I think everyone's got to be practical because everyone's got to get their nose into a hive of bees. I think perhaps if I'd have learnt things younger, it would have been a lot easier than trying to do it at my age. But I don't really think I'd have done too much differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's you learn more from doing, eh? And so do you see any common mistakes that new beekeepers are making on a regular basis?
Yeah, reading books.
But didn't you write a book?
Reading wrong books.
Okay,
well,
yeah.
I think there are some quite poor books out for beginners, and I think people look at a book, and if it's got loads of pictures, they think it's wonderful, without actually knowing about bees. If they just looked at the content, I mean, there are some with some awful advice in. I think that's one issue. I would love to see beginners start, okay, get themselves covered up, but I would like to see them discard their bee suits fairly quickly, and the gloves especially, because there's absolutely nothing like getting stung for concentrating your mind. Well, yeah, but there are a lot of people I see with very poor, sometimes very aggressive bees, and because they're not getting stung, they don't realise how many bad bees there are in the air. Back in the summer, I was with a group of about 9 beekeepers, I suppose. There was about a dozen colonies there. They were all fully booted and suited, and I was handling the colony. I said to them, with this colony, I said, what does anybody reckon about this colony? Oh, yeah, look all right. I said, well, what about the temper of them? Oh, I seem all right. Anybody got stung yet? No. I said, I have about a dozen times. And I showed them the stings in my arms. And, they just did not know. Now, the thing is, because people live closer to neighbours than they used to, they might not be getting stung, but somebody else does. And one of the things that concerns me when I go round to other beekeeping associations is the standard of bees and the bad temper of some of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the glove idea is a good idea, because I've seen some people in clubs and that, and they wear these gloves. They're like welding gloves, they're like really thick leather, and I'm surprised they can even move their hands.
Yeah, I think get rid of gloves first. I think they will become better beekeepers quite quickly. Another thing is observation. People don't observe things like they used to, and it's the same old thing. If you see something regularly, you see something different, or if I see something different, I notice it. Not many people do these days, and I think it's probably the practical sort of issue.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, if you can sit in front of your hive and just watch, and you can learn a lot, eh?
Yeah. I tell people that observation of a hive isn't once you get up to it, it's 20 yards away. But observation is something that you need. I won't identify them, but when I went to the States in June, I was literally 20 yards away from about 30 colonies, I suppose. And I said to the person I was with, "You got a problem with those bees?" "Oh, why?" he said. So I said, "Well, let's just get up a bit closer." I got up, and a lot of the colonies, about 50% of them, had chronic bee paralysis virus. The bees were sort of stuck on the front of the hive, and they're all black and shiny. And this guy I was with had, I think, about 80 colonies. Been keeping bees, I don't know, 15 years, perhaps, something like that. He didn't know anything about it, never heard anything about it at all. Anyway, I went through his hives. I didn't try to show him up because there's absolutely no need to do that in my view. So I went through, explained to him what was wrong with the bees, and he said, "But all their bees are like that." I said, "Well, yeah, but you've got a problem." And we went through 10 or dozen colonies, something like that. Don't like this. And he was visibly shocked. He really was. He got on his mobile phone to one of his chums, been keeping bees 40 years, who incidentally we were having dinner with that evening. Got onto him. "Do you know anything about it?" "No," he said. Didn't know anything about it. And to their credit, within about 2 hours, they got a load of information. They downloaded it, and they actually done something about it. So what I'm saying is that because, through simple observation, I picked that up.
So it became their normal, really, didn't it?
Yeah, they knew it was there.
Yeah.
Because they always got it, but didn't know what it was. Now, as a long-term beekeeper, I've noticed that these things have come into beekeeping. In the old days, if we had bees that were a bit shiny with ragged wings, it was because they were getting towards the end of their life and they'd flown a lot of miles. Looks the same but different reason.
Yeah, that's true. And so you mentioned there's a lot of poor books for beginners. What would you recommend as the best book for a beginner then?
Probably the best one is Beekeeping, a Practical Guide by a chap called Roger Patterson.
Okay. Yes, it is good. No, that's fantastic.
No, I'm not. I don't need to do any advertising at all. I think it would be grossly unfair for me to say what's good and what's bad. Really, yeah. I try to avoid that if I can.
I've read I've read the first few chapters, and I think it is really good, Roger. I like your book. It's kind of written like you speak, and I think it's really approachable, I think.
That's exactly what people have been telling me. It was originally intended for out-and-out beginners. I've had so many people been keeping bees 20, 30 years have said to me that they still get a lot from it. And it's strange what you say, because I've also had so many people tell me that reading the book is just like listening to me. I have to say, it's had one, to the best of my knowledge, one poor review. And I wouldn't criticise anybody, well, not too much anyway, but... Well, I think they got the wrong end of the stick, because I think a lot of teachers of newer beekeepers make the mistake of giving them options. You could do this, you could do that, you could do something else. The attitude I take is that you just give them, you tell them what's happening with bees, and then you give them one method. Once they're up and running with that, they gain the knowledge, they can then look sideways and see if something else might suit them better. And an example is that I only recommend in that book one type of hive. If you start describing 5 different kinds of hives, let's say, the person that's reading it, especially a first-timer, will get confused, won't know what to do. We'll go and ask somebody a question. They'll ask 4 beekeepers what they use. 2 will say one thing, and the other 2 will say something different. So there's 3 options, and they just get horribly confused.
Yeah, exactly. I think sometimes you give people too much choice, eh?
Yeah, I mean, at my local beekeeping association, we only teach one way. We teach people the absolute basics, and the basics are things like the life cycle, what happens to a colony when it swarms, disease recognition, those sort of things, so that when they're up to speed, and we concentrate very heavily on handling techniques too, so people can handle these. We then only teach them one way. So we take the roof off one way and we put it down in the same place, and that sort of thing. Once people have mastered that, then what we find is that they'll tweak it a little bit and do something to suit themselves. They'll go and watch another beekeeper. They might pick up another way of doing things. It suits them better. That's fine, no problem at all. So we try and concentrate on the simple stuff.
Well, that's it. I mean, if they can get their hives through a winter, a successful winter, and then I think that's a good start, isn't it?
We've got probably a slightly different situation than you. I guess the vast majority of your bees are the same. Are they Italians?
Generally Italians, yeah.
Yeah. So they're going to behave within shouting distance, similar. Some of ours will easily winter on a single brood chamber. Absolutely easily.
Oh, wow.
Others, they need 2 brood chambers just to get the food in to feed them. So it depends really where people get bees. We try to encourage them not to buy things commercially, because in this country what often happens, and don't not say always, but what often happens is that commercial beekeepers just slap a few frames of bees together and put an imported queen in, which is usually Italian or Carniolan or something like that. And they build up into massive colonies that use up an awful lot of food. Now, if the beekeeper isn't aware of that, they got their first hive and they got it through to February into March. Everything's going right. It looks well, and then all of a sudden it's dead because it's run out of food.
Yeah, I think Italians do eat a lot more food, eh?
Oh, hell of a lot more. Yeah. Well, it's not the bees. It's the brood, because brood, of course, is incredibly hungry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so what's your plans for next season?
Yeah, more of the same, really. I'm the apiary manager at my local association, and I keep trying to come up with different ideas. And one is that I'm hoping that I can take one colony that comes out of next spring, or comes out of the winter into the spring. I can take that, and I can split it up into hopefully 10 colonies that are strong enough to go into the following winter. As much as anything, so I can give people different ways of making increase. And we've got because of the massive number of newer beekeepers, a lot of beekeeping associations claim they can't supply enough bees. Well, my thinking is that with some of the methods that I use, you can, if you had 4 or 5 hives of bees, you can get 30, 40, perhaps 50 nukes out of them to either sell or give to members. So I'm going to do that as an experiment. It's really bringing together a lot of ideas that I've done over the years in isolation. I'm trying to bring them together. Yeah,
no, it sounds great. That's awesome. And so what's the best way for people to get in touch with you or check out what you're up to? I suppose, is it the website? Dave Cushman's website. I'm quite free with my email address. People can email me if they want to, but probably Cushman's website is the best way of getting hold of me. Yeah, no, it's a great resource, and I'll make sure that's in the show notes as well. The show notes for this show, everyone, will be kiwi.bz/Roger. Well, thanks so much, Roger, for coming on the show. It's been fantastic. I really appreciated your time this evening. Oh, have we started? I thought it was just a chat. We've started. We're finished. Oh, you disappointed me now. Well, we can go for another hour if you want, but no, it's okay. Yeah. It's all good. That's what it's about, Roger. No, you stay on the line there. I'll just close the show. Yeah, so thanks for coming. It's been awesome. And if people want to get in touch with you, I'll have all those links in the show notes. No trouble, Gary. Cheers a lot. Bye. Wow. That was impressive.
Oh, awesome.
I enjoyed talking to Roger. I enjoyed editing that podcast afterwards. Yep, so much pearls of wisdom, and there's so much amazing stuff there.
It's great to get the perspective from someone who has come through before Varroa mite and then coming to things now. So it's really awesome, and he's such a lovely guy.
Yes, and it was interesting, that thing about the chronic bee paralysis virus. I hadn't heard of that, have you?
No, I often saw bees that looked like this and wondered what was wrong with them. I knew there was something not quite right about them, but that means we've got it here in New Zealand.
Yep, I think so. And it was good to see what focuses the mind, eh? And I heard you chuckling during that bit.
Oh, I love it. Love it.
Great interview.
I'd like to get that on a T-shirt, actually. So we'll have to check with Roger if we can use his name and put that on a T-shirt.
Absolutely.
Nothing like a good sting.
Anyway, thanks, guys, for listening to the show. We appreciate you. And if you haven't joined our newsletter already, go to kiwi.bz/sign up and you can join our newsletter. And big thanks to the Isle of Man Beekeeping Federation for the photos we used on the show notes there, and also thanks to Roger Patterson for his photos and him taking the time to be with us.
Yeah, thanks, Roger, and yeah, awesome.
And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
See ya. Focus the mind.